Welcome, Texas Math Mundo audience. Today we have a spectacular treat. We have UIL number sense and mathematics royalty, Director Larry White. It's sure to be a good one. Let me take a moment and remind you that if you like the content of this channel, please take a moment and subscribe and hit the notification bell. Also, please hit the like button, push that like button, and leave a comment below. All right, number sense and math royalty, Director Larry White ahead. My name is Saul Cantu, and this is Texas Math Mundo. Texas Math Mundo audience, we have UIL number sense and mathematics royalty in the house. The director of UIL number sense and UIL mathematics for nearly 2 decades, the venerable Director Larry White. Welcome, Director Larry White.
Thank you, Saul. I appreciate it. I'm glad you asked me to be on here. I think it's going to be a lot of fun and it'll help the kids. I'm all for it.
Oh, yes, and it's such an honor to have you on my show. It's such an honor, so thank you. Let's start with, how are you doing? How have you been handling the pandemic?
Oh, I haven't really paid a lot of attention to it. We live in such a little tiny town, 17 people, that we don't see the outside world much. And so when we go into big towns, you wear your mask and do your thing. But, most of my pandemic was spent with, I had cataract surgery for over 10 weeks. I broke my foot playing golf. So I spent a lot of time just sitting around healing, But no, I've been doing fine and working on UIL math and UIL number sense for the year, and have a computer business that keeps me busy. So the pandemic is. The worst thing about the pandemic is it hurt our kids.
Yeah.
And we've got to get our kids back in school.
Yes.
That's just all there is to it. They need that. And we've got to get over all this stuff as quickly as possible. But as far as health-wise, the good Lord has blessed me, and I'm healthy and haven't had the pandemic, and life is good. So everything's fine.
Glad to hear it. What's the name of that small town?
Millersview.
All right.
Millersview. It's over by San Angelo, about 45 miles east of San Angelo, about 7 miles from the new Lake Ivy that just came into play back in the 90s. And it's about 180 miles north of San Antonio, but it's a little bitty place.
I bet you it's beautiful.
We call it beautiful downtown Millersview.
Cool. So, we just recently concluded a state meet. How did it go? What are your thoughts?
Well, the state meet went about as good as I think you could go. UIL worked so hard with the directors and everybody all year long, trying to find a way for the kids to compete, so we didn't have to cancel that like we did last year. The kids needed to compete. If we went 2 years without competition, we might have lost a lot of kids. So they did the very best they could. It was strenuous on the hubs for regional. The people that ran the regionals, we're just not talking about number sense and math. We're talking they had to run all the UIL competition. And it was a nightmare, but they got through it. And then we had the state meet, and I started putting everything together on Friday, and lined up my graders. And luckily, I was able to find 2 sets of graders, 2 sets of 3 graders that were not at the state meet, that were dependable, and I knew they could grade and all that stuff. And I was fortunate to have that. And then we started Saturday morning at 9, and we finally shut down the grading about 1:30 Sunday morning.
Wow!
Because we had to wait for the test to get scanned up, to UIL, then they had to come to me, then I had to get them to the graders, then they had to download and print them, then they had to grade them, then they had to put them back. And so, yeah, and then by the time I got through, of course, we didn't work on Sunday morning. We didn't go back to work until Sunday evening because Sunday is family and the Lord's Day. Yeah. And so we went back, and then I wrapped it up Monday and had our the verification period, which was 3 hours of real fun. But because it's all done online. But when it was all said and done, the kids got to compete. There were some good scores. There wasn't any errors on either test, so always pleased with that. And so it went well for what it had to be. And like I tried to tell everybody I see, we have to be sure and thank the UIL staff for all the hard work they did so our kids could compete. It was important.
Well, despite all the difficult circumstances, by all accounts, people almost universally agree it was very successful and people were very pleased. So, yeah. Awesome. And the kids benefit, it's really good to see the kids be able to compete.
Right. Yeah. You think about those seniors last year who didn't get to compete, who had state championships in their goals and just didn't even get to come. And so, yeah, it was great that we got to compete this year. Yes. I felt like UIL and the directors, we all got together and we were going to work hard and find a way somehow.
And you did, thankfully. Thank God,
Yeah.
Rumor has it that you are retiring. Is this true?
Yes and no. I'm going to continue doing the number sense, but I'm giving up the mathematics. Not that I don't love mathematics, I truly do. But doing both tests for 19 years has really taken its toll. And I've talked to UIL about giving up the math. I've been wanting to get the two directorships split anyways, because it's too much for one individual to do. But I couldn't find somebody qualified enough that I would turn it over to, so there'd be a nice, easy transition. And when I found when Cliff McCurdy, who was at Argyle for many years, when he retired and told me that he would be willing to do the math, if be the math director, I got too busy and talked with UIL, and so Cliff McCurdy will take over for me this next year. Now I will be Cliff's assistant and consultant and proofer for mathematics, and Cliff is going to be my assistant and proofer for number sense. So I say I'm retiring. I'm no longer writing the test, math test, but I'm not going away. I'm going to be part of it. We want a smooth transition for these kids to go through from this year to next year as if nothing really happened.
Well, let me tell you, with your endorsement, that gives me all the confidence in the new director.
Yeah, I think Cliff will do a very good. He wrote 5 questions for every one of my tests this year, just so we could sort of blend them in and see how things were going. Yeah, Cliff's been in the business forever, as long as I have. Well, maybe not as long. Nobody's quite as old as I am, but yeah, he's going to do well. I think what Cliff's going to bring to the math contest is something I was missing. I haven't been in the actual classroom in 20 years. Mm-hmm. And this is a curriculum-driven test, and I worked hard to keep up with the textbooks and the curriculum, but things were happening in the math classroom that I hadn't seen in some time. Cliff's going to be able to bring that addition to the math test. Okay. And I think that's valuable. And that was one of the reasons why I decided to give it up, because I was getting further and further away. No matter how I tried, I would meet with the coaches, and the coaches would talk about kids doing this in the math class and doing that. And I would go, wow, I didn't know that. Huh. And so it was time. So I'm going to dedicate my time to the number sense test and try to write the best number sense questions and come up with some new number sense tricks. And I'm working on the history of number sense. It's a It's going to be a short journal on how number sense began at UIL. I'd hoped I already had it finished, but the pandemic kept me from doing my research. But I'm going to write a history of number sense so that everybody can see it, and it's going to be at the UIL. We'll have a copy of all of it, and I'm going to scan a bunch of the old tests from the old days so they have copies of all this stuff, because there is no history of such thing.
That's wonderful. Preserving the history of such a beautiful tradition we have in Texas.
When the number sense technically is one of the three longest UIL contests. It first came about in 1919 as mental math.
Wow.
But the actual number sense, the way we see it today, began in 1943.
Wow.
Some math teachers were urging UIL to come up with a mental math competition, and they talked to the math people and to military recruiters.
Really?
And the military recruiters said, we need these applicants to think on their feet.
Yeah.
And so between the two, talking to the two people, UIL decided we're going to start having number sense. The first number sense test, like you and I see it, is 1943.
During World War II. Wow, and the military influence. Wow, this is so fascinating. I eagerly await that book, because I'm going to read it. I eagerly await that.
Yeah, it's not going to be a big book because there's not enough information out there, but I'm going to put through a timeline and talk about how things took place and when such things happened. The number sense and slide rule came into play the same year, 1943.
Wow.
The first state.
What's a slide rule?
The first state meet was 1944, the spring of 1944, and it involves slide rule and number sense, the way we see it today. And so the number sense was the engineering half part, and number sense was the mental math part. They didn't want a math test then because math was being taught in the curriculum. They wanted something special, and they come up with this mental math. The first number sense manual was written in 1924, I believe.
Wow.
But it was written for mental math. And there's some stuff between 1919 and 1943 that's just fascinating. And I can't wait to put it on paper so that everybody can see it. It's pretty amazing. So, it's... so I'm not really retiring, per se.
Well, you've given us some fascinating tidbits, so I'm very eager now. Wow, good stuff.
It would be great. My wife said when I said I was retiring from public schools and found out I was going to teach at the Angelo State University for 8 years, and then I was doing the UIL. Then I had my computer business. She says you couldn't spell retirement if somebody opened it to a dictionary. And that's the way I am today. I'm not ready to retire.
Well,
my mind is slowing down a little, but I was getting concerned about the math test, and I felt like the kids needed a new approach, and I think it's going to be a good deal.
So for 2 decades, and occasionally I would make it to state. It was so wonderful the way you led the mathematics and number sense, and the leadership that you displayed at the state meet, and you were such a central, powerful figure, a figurehead. So I'm kind of curious about where you come from. I think people should know a little bit about your story. So where are you from, born and raised?
I was born in Bakersfield, California.
Really? Not Texas?
No, I was raised in the Mojave Desert. I actually spent the first 7 years of my life living in a boxcar number 3 at the Golden Queen Mine.
Really?
It's on my birth certificate. Boxcar number 3, Golden Queen Mine. I graduated from Azusa High School in 1965. And of course, we all know what was going on in 1965.
Vietnam.
And so I spent my 18th birthday, where most of us spend our 18th birthdays, at the induction center, getting ready to go off to where we were going. I joined the Air Force. I had a wonderful scholarship at Pepperdine to go study mathematics, but I didn't have enough money to do the rest, and it didn't matter anyways. We were all going to the service. So I spent 4 years in the Air Force, 1965 to 1969. And when I got out, I met my wife while I was in the Air Force in 1967. She was from Paint Rock, Texas, just about 15 miles from here. And I met her in 1967. We've been married for 53, going on 54 years.
Wow.
And so when I got out of the service, I didn't go back to California. I came to Texas. Oh, wow. And that's how I got here. I love Texas.
So we got to thank your wife. We have to thank your wife.
There you go. I love California mountains, and I love the beach. I love to surf, but I didn't like much for the crowds and the people. I found good people in the state of Texas, and I liked them. And so I came back and been here ever since. And after I got my degree at Angelo State. By the way, the military GI Bill paid for both my master's and my doctorate, which was just a blessing. I've been blessed a lot. Somebody asked me when I thought I wanted to be a math teacher. I was going to be a math teacher when I was 7 years old.
Oh, really?
I had no other desire to do anything. We see kids today who can't decide what they're going to do with their lives. And I feel sort of sad for them because I was blessed at the age of 7 to know what I was doing with mine. And I never changed. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I got offered lots of good jobs with my math degrees, but I didn't care. I was going to be a math teacher. And that's what I was, and that's what I am. It never changed.
That's amazing to have that clarity at such an early age. Wow.
Yeah. I think I've been blessed in so many ways that it's hard for me to count all my blessings. That's the reason I have sort of that closeness that you hear me when I'm talking about the Lord. He's sitting right next to me right now as we're talking, so it's, it's been great. So that's it. That's where I came from. That's where I started. I coached athletics. My actual UIL coaching, I coached slide rule the last year it was in existence.
Oh, 1979?
And then, yes. Yeah. And then, was it 79? Might have been 77, whatever it was. Anyways, the last year, might have been 79. But whatever it is, I coached slide rule the last year. And then I started coaching number sense, math, number sense and calculator. Math didn't exist till 1991. So I coached number sense and math, calculator, and physics. And then math came to play, and I coached for 25 years in public schools. And then when I left public schools, I went to Angelo State University. They wanted me to redo their math curriculum for elementary and junior high teachers. Instead of them taking math classes, they wanted them to learn how to teach math. So I taught effective strategies for teaching math for kids learning to be junior high and elementary teachers. And it was fantastic fun. Fantastic fun. So, and then along that way, I guess there was, when I started 19 years ago, Don Scow got sick. Don Scow was the
previous director.
Number sense director, the one my kids took tests under him, the Scow test, we call them. He was the director of number sense and math. And he got sick, and UIL got looking for somebody to take a place for a year or so. And some of my good buddies, all these good coaching buddies, we know who can do it. Larry can do it. Anyways, and so because I had so much respect for Don Scal, I said, yes, I will take it over for a year until he gets well. Well, it was 2 years. And after the second year, Bobby Hawthorne, in charge of the UIL back then, academics, said, we like where the direction the contests are going. We'd like you to stay on. And I said, well, what about Mr. Scow? And he said, well, we really don't want to keep changing back and forth. And I said, well, I tell you what I'll do. I'll do it if you will let me hire Mr. Scow to be my proofer and consultant. And they said, you would let him do that? I said, I would encourage him to do that. So Don became my proofer and my consultant in both contests, and we worked together for all these years up until this last year. And
wow.
And so I had the best of both worlds, because I had him there watching and helping. And so it was. So that's how it all happened.
What a fruitful, what a productive collaboration, all these years.
Yeah.
And I must add, Larry White, Texas, UIL, it's been a good fit.
Yeah. Once again, I think I've just been so blessed. I mean, how many people could get to do what I wanted to do and what I enjoyed doing? And then when I got out of the classroom, I didn't get out of the classroom because I hated teaching. I love teaching, but I wanted to I wanted to work with more kids than just what I could in a classroom. I wanted to teach teachers to teach. I wanted to mentor teachers. I wanted to travel to schools and work with teachers. I wanted to hit more kids that I could possibly hit. And the more teachers I could hit, the more they could hit kids. And so I felt like that's what I had to do and I need to do. And I've been blessed to be able to do every bit of it.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you, what was the state of the contest when you first entered, and how have the contests evolved through the last 2 decades?
Okay, when the contest first the number sense contest, in my mind, when it first came out, was extremely good, but it was what I call tricky. By that it means it was full of tricks. Now, there are no tricks in mathematics. You know that, and I know that. There are strategies. There wasn't much mental math. There's a difference to me between tricks, knowing how to multiply by 25, by dividing by 4, and the mental math of being out about how to multiply 2 numbers that don't have tricks. So what I decided to do was to start bringing in some mental math, expanding their minds, making them hold things in their heads, or making them learn to use their knuckles as carriers and borrowers, whatever they needed to do. I wanted them to think mathematics and not just tricks. I remember the first year I put number sense, I put on 3-digit times 3-digit. The coach told me, you don't really think those kids can do that in their head. And I said, not only can they, I'm considering going 4 to 4. These kids can do anything they want to do. And so I tried to bring some more mental math in there. And then I started taking number sense tricks that were old that we've all got. I've got all Don Scow's books and all the things in all my books. And I started taking those and expanding those tricks in different directions. So from that perspective, it's changed. Other than that, it hasn't much changed. I looked at I looked at the AA test. I used to have all the tests from the A test to today, from 1943.
Wow.
But I lost a box somewhere moving. But I was looking back at a letter N test, and I don't remember where that'd be, but that would be back in the 50s somewhere. And there's not much difference, other than some of the different type of problems I brought in. I brought in set theory, but there was set theory on problems back then, and there was bases back then, and everyone says, no, bases. Yeah, they were there. So it hasn't changed a great deal, but a little bit. Now, the math changed quite a bit. The math test, of course, you got to remember, when I took over, there were no calculators.
Yes. I remember this, actually.
Yeah, you couldn't use a calculator. It was strictly mathematics. But what I saw as a coach, I saw freshmen going and taking competitions and scoring negative 100. And I told myself when I took over, you can't keep kids excited about math to be a senior if they're quitting as a freshman.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm going to do everything I can to get these freshmen a chance to be successful. And so I started changing the contest itself a little bit and brought in some, everything comes from the curriculum except for my five or six special problems, my special numbers.
An endless source of joy and entertainment for us.
That's exactly right. And I think if I have to say I thought the best thing I did for the math test, I made it a teaching test. The kids were going to get X amount of data in a curriculum, in a class. But there's so much out there that there's not time for in the class.
Yeah.
I was able to bring in special things like special numbers and special patterns. I was able to bring things in where the kids would have to see them early in the year and start doing some research and start doing some studying and learning outside of the classroom. And I've heard many coaches tell me that was the one thing they enjoyed about my test was it was a teaching test.
Yeah.
And that was not... Go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say, you must know this already, but even in my coaching career and all throughout the state, your labor producing these tests has been such an endless source of joy, entertainment, fun, as we've discussed it. What an awesome thing you've accomplished.
Yeah, I think that's one thing. But somebody said, "Well, wasn't it difficult to make it a teaching test?" And I said, "No, every test I ever wrote as a teacher was a teaching test. I wanted to test the material they knew, but I wanted them to see something they had to go learn something new. I wanted to encourage growth. So making it a teaching test was never a problem, and I enjoyed every minute of it. I'd go find some things. I said, boy, they would love to see this. I remember when we first did those special numbers, coaches were looking at me and going, boy, I said, where are you getting this garbage? But it wasn't garbage. It was real. It was all mathematics. And kids fell into it a lot easier than the coaches do. The kids loved all of it. And I love the use of names, the funny names I did, like
salty water.
Yeah, salty water. That's what I was going to say. I thought about you. I love doing that because when I listen to kids and watch kids take tests, I see them giggle and I see them so they're seeing these things. I had kids over the years send me their names and said, "Can you put us on your test?" And I would arrange their names in some way to put their names on the test. And then I'd get an email after the test, and they'd tell their coach, "Oh, Mr. White put us in there." So, yeah. It was not just a job. It was a joy. It got tiresome. Sometimes I'd spend 75 working hours on one test.
Oh, wow.
And it's not so much the questions. You can be very straightforward with the questions, but I want them to have a specialness, and then the 5 answers. I had to work a problem 5 different ways. I said, what would a freshman do? How could a senior miss this thing? Mm-hmm. I would work. So, I don't know, have you seen the state test?
I have not scrutinized it. No, not the math one.
We get a chance, look at the very last question. It talks about the 11,000 and something problems I've written in 19 years, really? and the 55,000 answers.
Yeah. It's good. It's hard to get good detractors. Exactly.
Yes, yeah. And I didn't want just any old detractors. That's not the point. And so, so yeah, it's changed quite a bit from there. It's still curriculum driven, but it had a different flair. And now, and that was my style. And Don fell into it, and he loved reading and doing the problems too. As I changed the test, and Cliff will have his flair. He'll have his style, and it's all going to be about the same types of meat and potatoes. But
sure.
Yeah. I'm proud of the math test.
I was going to ask, what role should the calculator have in the mathematics contest?
Couple of years ago, it might have been, no, it wasn't 19, it might have been 18, 17. Josie had a young man that was, you remember who I'm talking about?
Josie Mallory Klein.
Yeah, she had a competitor, and he told his, they're programming these calculators and stuff to do this and do that, and they're sharing programs. I know schools that are actually hiring professional programmers to program the schools. I think that's all wrong. I have no problem with a kid learning the math to program the calculator. I think that's super. This is a technological world. That's what these kids live in. And if a kid wants to teach his calculator how to find out if a number is odious or evil, I think that's fantastic. But we have too many that want to win, so that they're having programs written and then they're sharing the programs. Well, this young man that year told his teammates, you guys need to quit programming and start studying. He said, I'm going to prove something tomorrow. This was the night before. He said, I'm going to not use my calculator. And Josie said, yes, you are. He said, no. She said, yes, you are. And anyways, he was sitting in front of me at the state meet. He opened up his two calculators and set it on the desk. He never touched those calculators.
Wow.
He just never said. He worked 59, skipped one, missed one.
Wow.
Blew everybody out of the ballpark. And had, I think he had about 6 minutes or 7 minutes, 6 seconds or 7 seconds to go, and never missed, and he won the state title. Blew everybody away. The calculator test, the math test, has good, useful problems for the calculator. I don't use the calculator when I write the math test. I use it to check my solutions.
Yes.
But I don't use the calculator. Every problem on the calculator test can be written worked without a calculator. Now, the advantage to a calculator is there are some good problems that can go on the test that couldn't be there without the calculator. Yeah. And the best way I think about that is, you remember when we used to have to graph functions, and you graph a parent function, and then all of a sudden you wanted to change the exponent. You could graph 2 or 3 in a class period. Mm-hmm. Now you can graph 20 or 30.
Yeah.
And so the technology has been a wonderful tool. But if you want to compete with what I call the top dogs, you can't use that calculator more than 10 times in 40 minutes. 40-minute time limit, it closes you down. Yes. These kids that are finishing the test, like the young man that scored 338 that day, he flew through that thing because of knowledge. Knowledge is the key to speed, and knowledge is the key to scoring high, not the calculator. I always remember a coach that said if he had 40 minutes and a TI 91, he could beat my test to death. And I said, we're going to run a little experiment here. And I said, there was a kid from state the last year was sitting there at a SAC, and then a kid sitting next to him, and he had a calculator, and then this coach had his TI 91. And so I wrote this problem. There was a law of cosines problem. And I said, okay, when I say go, solve the problem. Well, you know who stood up first? The kid with that calculator. He was first. Then the kid with the calculator. Then the coach is still sitting over there working. And I asked him, I said, what seems to be a problem? Well, he said, I know that's the law of cosines, but I can't find it on my calculator because these calculators have so much stuff.
Yes.
Pages and pages of stuff. And he says, I can't find where it's located. And I said, Coach, why do you even need the calculator? He said, well, law of cosines, you got to take the cosine. I said, Coach, look, it's a cosine of 60 degrees.
You said that commit to memory.
you should already know that. And it's a point I make because, you kids can depend on that calculator way too many times. All you have to do is look at the problems. Good seniors will take my very first problem, the order of operation problem.
Yes.
They will take my very first problem and they will never touch their calculator.
Wow.
Because you can go right through that, but you can take your finger and just and put the answer down. Kids that are not as confident, they want to punch that button. And by the time they get through with that first problem, most of these good competitors, they're doing 3 and 4. So the calculator is valuable. I love it. I think it's a great tool. I don't see any way in the world we shouldn't keep it the way it is. I don't care if you put stuff in there and program it, because if you use it more than 10 times, you're not going to beat those big boys and big girls.
Well, that's a great and fascinating perspective from the test writer director himself, Larry White. That's an interesting perspective. Yeah,
it's don't spend your time programming and all that kind of stuff. Spend your time learning knowledge. And when it's all said and done and your calculator dies, all that stuff you program dies with it.
Yeah, exactly.
When you get out of UIL competition and go off into the world, that knowledge stays right there in that beautiful calculator up here.
Yes.
And so, it's a lot like number sense shortcuts. I would never let my students use a shortcut that they couldn't prove to me why it worked. Because I don't care about the shortcut itself. I care about how it came about.
Yes.
I mean, what's the mathematics behind it? Because they will forget the shortcut. They will never forget the math.
True.
And so my kids had to, they didn't have to do a formal proof, but they had to demonstrate to me some pattern or whatever, why it worked before I would let them use it. Because I wanted my kids to learn mathematics. I wanted them to learn the joy of mathematics. I mean, my life bubbles from mathematics, and I want the kids to do the same. And I knew somewhere down the line when they were going to college, somebody would say, you can't use a calculator. A lot of college professors still don't let them use calculators. You can't use a calculator. Well, if you've got knowledge, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
And if you can't use shortcuts, but they wouldn't know a shortcut if they knew it. But they can use a shortcut, or at least they understand the mathematics behind it.
That's right.
And so, it's all a perspective. And I loved winning state meets, and I loved winning the championships, taking the kids to state. I thought it was fantastic. It was good for the kids. But the most important thing is I loved it when they left and went off to college and went off and became engineers and computer programmers and doctors and teachers. Oh, so many of them become teachers. Yeah, no.
Absolutely. I was going to say also, when you know the math and stuff like that, whenever they throw a curveball or a twist in the problem or a variation, those ones, if you just program and don't know what you're doing, they get you every time. But if you know the math, you can handle the variations. You can handle the twist, that curveball that gets thrown at you.
That happened at state meet. It's been 7 or 8 years ago. The top kid had written a program, and all they had to do was put these numbers in. And so the coach had the kid transfer the program to the other kids, to the freshmen's calculators, and they'd go to the practice meets and go to whatever. They put in the numbers to get the answer. But the evil test writer, me, I would twist it towards the end to see if they really knew what was going on. That's one of my favorite fun things to do, to keep giving continuous problems and then to sort of bend a little bit and then get to state and say whatever. And at state, the good kid, recognized there was a change. And he knew how to work the problem anyway.
Yeah.
So he made the change. The freshmen, all 3 freshmen, put in the numbers. All 3 of them got wrong.
Right.
They lost the state meet by 2 points.
That evil test writer.
But Cliff McCurdy has talked about that over the years. He said he always loved the way I would take problems and twist them towards the end to see if the kids really picked up on the actual mathematics. And I worked hard to do that. I wasn't trying to trap them or confuse them. I just wanted to see if they knew the mathematics behind it all. So yeah, the calculator has value, lots of good value. Just don't depend on it forever.
Yes. So I have a couple of retrospective questions to ask you to look at past on your career. Like, for example, what are your favorite memories over the years? Any special stories?
Oh, wow. It is so hard to sit there, any special things. You know, the friendship I made with the coaches across the state, as a coach myself, and then as the director, they're just, you just can't explain how good that is. I've been getting emails about coaches are now finding out that I'm not going to do the math, and I've been getting these emails, and they're hard to read sometimes because they're so complimentary. But boy, it's special. I think of what was special to me as a classroom teacher. I never turned my back on my students. I always look them in the face. And the reason is I wanted to see that glint in their eye when they learned something. I didn't want to miss it. The glint fed me and made me do what I want. And if I didn't see one, I had to work harder. I needed that glint. Same thing when I'm at these competitions and watching these take tests. I want to see, or in SACs when they're asking questions, I want to see it in their face. I want to see that glint in their eye. It feeds me. And the other thing that I did it when I was a director for TMSCA. I was a high school director for about 6 years. And the first year, I had to run the freshman number sense contest at San Antonio, at the at the TMSCA state meet. And so we're in there, and I get the kids ready, and I tell them to go, say go. That was the loudest silence I ever heard in my lifetime. When you hear nothing but brain power speaking to you, I think I had about 145 kids, and all that noise from that brain, you could hear a pin drop, but you couldn't hear it over that noise. That noise of their minds just pumped me up, and every time I'm at the state meet, I listen to that noise and that number sense test, and I think to myself, and even the math, the papers are running all over the place and calculated, but you can hear that noise, that mind. I think that's the epitome of everything that I do, and it gives me the energy, the feed to come back and do it again next year. But special things, there's so many special things happen as a coach and as a director. I think about every state meet I go to. I'll tell you this story.
Yes.
And UIL will appreciate this, I think. We were at the state meet, and we were having to use those banquet rooms or whatever for the award assembly across the street from the competition. And supposedly the president or one of the big wigs, I think it was the president, was going to be there and wanted to attend an awards assembly. Well, one of the UIL people said, well, you got to go listen to Mr. White's. I do award assembly a little bit different than most people.
I've been there.
Yeah. And he said, well, that's what I want to go to. And so I don't know he's coming until later. And somebody says, hey, such and such is coming to see your award assembly. And I said, oh, that's good. They said, well, you're not going to do like you always do. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, talk about the Lord and all that stuff. And I said, why not? And they said, well, that's not supposed to be in school. And I said, the Lord goes with me everywhere. And I said, I'm not going to change for him or anybody else. The only time I'll ever change is when the Lord tells me to. And I said, so I'm going on. So he came, and he was standing there, and I gave my spiel like I always do. And, I believe in it so much. It's not made up. It's pure heart. And So, and then he would get ready to do the medals, and he said, well, I'll hang the medals around their necks. And I said, no, sir, you can't do that. He said, why not? And I said, that's my joy. That's my honor. You can hand them to me. I'll put them around their neck. But I have to visit with each one of these young people. So whenever it was all over with and everybody filtered out, he came up to me and shook my hand and said, he had never heard anything like that, and he was so proud that I had the courage and the faith to be able to stand up before people and speak my profession. And I said, it's not a problem for me. It's my biggest problem is I want to cry when I talk about it because of the heart, how I feel. And so that was a special time for me because a lot of people were real concerned that this might not be the thing, but it's always going to be the thing.
Yes. I've got a chance to witness some of that myself, and it was always been so inspiring. Director Larry White, so inspiring, and it's so heartfelt, and it's so genuine, so real.
Yeah, there's nothing fake there. The Lord guides me in everything I say and do, and I still have a lot of things to atone for in my life, but I'm going to speak my way I feel without any trouble. That's what it is.
Awesome. I love it. Awesome.
And then I could tell special stories, I guess, forever. But so every year is a special year with all the new coaches I meet and all the old coaches I meet and all the kids. It's all special.
So this next segment is, I think, very important. I'm going to ask you to give several groups of people some advice because, you're the man. You've been the man for 2 decades now. You're the man. So this is from the guy's mouth himself. So first group of persons, do you have any advice for coaches or sponsors?
I believe being a UIL coach is a wonderful thing. But I believe we're all teachers. And teachers need to teach. I think sometimes coaches get so concerned about trying to win that they lose sight of what we're actually there for. We need to teach. When I was a coach, there was a group of a couple of other coaches, and we were in the same district, or we were in the same region. But while the kids were taking the contest before grading was taking place, we would sit around and share things we learned. We knew we were teaching our opponents, the same thing we knew that, but we were of the opinion that the kids that win are the ones that work the hardest. And so we wanted to know as much as we could to teach them so they could learn more. And if they worked harder than the other coaches' kids, then they would win. If they lost, it wouldn't matter because they gained all that knowledge. I would tell coaches, sit and share and talk. I know they think it's, well, I can't win with that. Well, better teach your kids with what you know and what you can learn. Because I don't have all the answers. I had to learn from other coaches. I had to read. I had to study. And it's okay. I know a lot of coaches that don't agree with that philosophy. But competition and winning wasn't the name of the game in me. I wanted to teach. So I would say tell coaches, at least find people in other areas, other districts or other classifications, and get yourself a group of people together where you can learn together and so that you can teach. You can't teach what you don't know. So learn from each other. Every coach has knowledge that I don't have, that I learned. I learned a wonderful thing about something that I've known about for many, many years, but I never looked at it from that approach. That this young man at math camp at Texas Tech a couple years ago, this young man at math camp come up and said, well, I think we can do it this way. And he taught me something that I never realized, even though I knew the concept, I never realized to go that way. So here I am, 72 years old, then 72, and he's teaching me something. We can learn from each other. Coaches need to learn from each other. Coaches need to make this fun. I give Andy Zapata from Oazo all the credit in the world. Andy always took his kids in advance, and they would always do something special before or after competition. He made it a joy. Don't make this drudgery. And coaches need to learn about goal setting. Okay. You can't set the goal where your kids have to win, because it's not going to happen. Not everybody can win. You look at the state meet, there can only be 6 state champions. You had 128 number sense kids, only 6 can be state champions. So do we tell those other 122 you didn't succeed? I don't use the word failure, by the way. I didn't use it in the class. I never used that kind of words. They didn't succeed yet. That's just an old pet of mine. So these kids made it to state for whatever reason or however they made it. So it's not that they're not state champions. They're champions. They're just not the state champions. So we have to set goals where kids can say, listen, coach, I did one more problem than I'd ever done before. Yeah. I scored 5 points more than I ever did before. You have to set goals for them that are easy for them to reach, and yet goals that they have to reach higher to get. And it's I'll give you a story if we have time. Yes, I don't know how much.
We have plenty of time.
Yeah. We had a young man on my math team many, many years ago. He was not very good mathematics, but he loved traveling with the math team. Spanish boy. Okay. And he was a hoot, but he loved traveling with the kids, and so he would try to learn things. And he went to all the contests with us, competed, never won anything, never. And I'll get a little emotional about this, but anyways, he didn't win. He just wanted to win one ribbon. Well, graduation day, at graduation, my math team gave him a ribbon.
Wow.
For his accomplishments on being with the math team all those years. And just held it up and introduced him to the crowd and told him how hard he worked. And they gave them a special ribbon they had made just for him. Beautiful that young story. Man wasn't real smart or anything else, but you know what he's doing today? And I can't remember where he's at now, but he's helping struggling students with school and with life. He's not a consultant, but he that's what he does for a living. Wow. And he uses those examples of how hard he worked, and he got his reward at the end. So we have to set goals for our kids, because they're not all going to be state champions. And they usually, when I send out information to coaches for the math sacks and stuff, I have a list of goals in there that I use. My kids would get on the school bus or on wherever we got, and they would hand me their 3 goals. I had them write 3 goals, an easy goal, a little bit harder one, and the ultimate goal. And when they would come back, I would never ask them what their scored. I'd ask them how they fit their goals. And if they could hit 2 of the 3 goals, or even 1 of the 3 goals, they were successful. And I tried to teach them that way. And ultimately, if you get them setting those goals, they keep setting those goals a little bit higher, and eventually that goal is going to be that state title. and some of them are going to make it, some are not, but they're going to sure keep trying. So yeah, for coaches, they need to make it fun. They need to learn from each other, teach each other, learn from the kids. Oh my land, learn from the kids. Kids are so bright today. And then they need to learn how to set goals for their kids. The kids can't come up and walk to you and say, "Saul, I'm going to win this championship. I'm going to win first place today." That's a nice goal, but it better not be your only one, because all the rest of the kids at competition are going to win the same thing. And they have to have something else to fall off to.
You know, Director Larry White, I really felt your faith in that answer, too. And what a beautiful ribbon story. What a beautiful ribbon story. And doesn't that speak to the greater good of what UIL actually does? You know, the beauty of what we're engaged in. You know, I really felt your faith in that answer. You know, I think
I believe in it.
You know, and I think you kind of answered my next question a little bit, but no, my next question was give advice to students.
Well, once again, students need to set their own goals.
Yes.
That's crucial. Students need to set goals. They may need some guidance on how to set those, but they need to set goals, because they have to have a rung to reach. If the rung is way too high, they can't do it. You know, they got to have a rung to reach, and another one to reach for, and maybe another one to reach for. So they got to set goals. They have to be willing to pay the price. And the price is you have to practice. Number sense kids that make it to state and become state championships in number sense, I had several. They're taking 10 number sense tests a day in between regional and state. Practice. However, test taking is generally a waste of time. Because if you want to increase speed, you have to increase knowledge.
Yeah, they're okay. Okay, I got you.
And too many times a coach will say, "Well, my kid can't get past number 20." And I said, "Well, why not?" And they said, "Because he runs out of time." And I said, then he's taking tests. Forget the time. Throw the time out the door. Work the problems. Yeah. Work as many problems as he feels like working. Use a calculator. Do whatever you got to do. Get him familiar with the problems. The more familiar he becomes, the better he is. And I said, we don't want to take a bunch of time tests. My math kids never took the time math test, ever, except in competition, ever. Because no kid I know of has 40 minutes in their lifetime. They have regular school, they have chores, they have extracurricular activities, band, football, whatever it may be. They have to have family time. They have to have time with their Lord. They don't have 40 minutes. They need to grab what minutes they can to work problems. If a coach uses their coaching time to test them, in my opinion, he's wasting teaching time. You don't want kids to take tests in front of you. Have them take tests at home. Have them work problems at home. Bring them there to you so that the coach can work with the problems they can't do. So they have to sacrifice time when they'd rather maybe watch a show, TV. Well, do a problem in between commercials. They may have 10 minutes free in English class. Have your math with you and work a problem. They have to find the time to work problems, but don't do a bunch of test taking. Now you have to do some number sense test taking right before, because you have to pick up your rhythm.
Sure.
And the rhythm is crucial, unless that evil test writer writes a test that doesn't have rhythm. But you have to have rhythm, so you have to take some. But these kids that do them day in and day out. All of my math classes, Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, and Trigonometry, and Pre-Cal, all of my math classes took number sense in the classroom. Yeah. It might be only 5 minutes, and I don't care if they wrote on the paper. We didn't play by the rules. I just give them number sense tests, say, okay, we got 5 minutes, let's go. And they would go after it. And they would work problems as fast as they could. I didn't care if they used calculator, whatever. Because I wanted them to be, it's like we talked about earlier, I wanted math to be transparent. I wanted them to see mathematics. So all my kids did it. And you'd be a bit surprised. I've told many a coach, try that for a while. You'd be a bit surprised how many of those good number sense kids and good math kids are sitting in the background that don't know what all that is. And champions can rise to the top if you plan it just right.
Yes, there's some diamonds in the rough in there. You just got to find them.
Yeah,
I agree.
Definitely is. And my pre-cal kids, and they had to work 2 math tests on their own every 6 weeks. And I didn't care how they did it. I didn't care if they shared it, but on their own, they had to turn in 2 math tests because that's what the math test is. It's curricular mathematics.
Yeah.
And you'd be a bit surprised how much that helped them in the math class. And then those that wanted to become part of the math team, it just fell right in place.
Not to mention the SAT.
Oh, yeah, SAT. Well, this exit level test, the STAR and all that kind of stuff. Have kids just sit and work the number sense test.
Yeah.
It's full of math, all the way from elementary math to third-year calculus.
Yeah.
What a great place to practice. And forget the rules. We don't care about the UIL rules. The tests are there, and they're perfect for kids to do. Yeah, it's going to do nothing but help their future in every way. And I guess the biggest thing I tell those kids is don't be spending so much time testing. Okay. It's just you learn by working problems and being familiar with problems. You'll see the same problem pop up like a number sense test time and time again. And if you've never seen it before, you may not be able to solve it because it shocks you. It's what we call a shocker. Oh my land, where'd that come from? But you should have already seen it all along before district, regional, state. And so work the problem, do the problems. And the kids have to do like the coaches. They have to work together.
Yeah.
They have to be willing to work together. One of my favorite teams in high school, they would, there's certain things in number sense you have to know for sure. Yeah. You have to know your onesies and you have to know your squares and your cube. You have to know those things automatically. And they would walk down the hallway, and one of them would walk by another one and say 1,278, 728. The other one would go 12 cube, and the kids around them would go nerds. and they would respond champs.
Yes, great response.
They got to feel good about what they do. Don't let the peers tell you that you're not doing right. You convince them as a team. You convince them that you're doing right. That it's good for you. You guys ought to try this stuff. It's great. And
awesome advice.
That would be something there.
Right.
And then, like I say, when I do stacks and when I send out information to new coaches, I have a big long list of things that I did that they're willing to look at, and they want to use it, fine. If they don't, throw it out the door. But it's what I did and built my programs on. Oh. And I'm proud to say I was lucky enough and blessed enough to have a lot of great kids, and we were very, very successful. And so we were very proud of that. So, yeah, those are some of the highlights. But it's got to be fun. They've got to be hunger for knowledge. Got to be hungry for it, and be willing to do things and work at it. It doesn't come easy. It's not a gimme. And people say, well, mathematicians are born. Number sense kids are born, and that's phooey. That's just not true. I mean, heck, I made a D in sophomore geometry in high school. I couldn't prove anything. It just drove me crazy. But I learned to prove when I got to college. So it's all about the knowledge. We're not born with it. The closest thing I could say I was born with math was when the Lord told me I was going to be a math teacher when I was 7th grade.
Clarity
when I was 7 years old. Yeah.
So, yeah. How about advice for the future director?
Well, for number sense, I know the future director,
Ah.
and I'm going to continue along the lines. I thought some of the tests this year might have been a little bit more difficult because I'm a little bit disappointed in the scores, but I attribute some of that. I've already looked at the test and I found a few problems I probably need to work on. But I think the COVID had a lot to do with the kids not being able to be with their coaches and practice like they should. So I'm going to find some way to try to get number sense a little bit more transparent out there and help some of these coaches that, some of these coaches have no clue where to get information and stuff like that. So I'll work that. The math test, it needs to stay curriculum, curriculum divide, which I know Cliff's going to do. He knows the curriculum thing. And he has to continue to find a way to make it so that the kids want to do it. They won't, and I'm not saying he needs to use the funny names like I do or the special crazy problems like I do. I have my own style.
Yeah.
I have a sign that I still have it in the room over here. It used to be on my door and it said, "Welcome to White's World." I mean, my world was different. When I closed the door, no one knew what was going on there. I didn't know half the time what was going on there. It was my world. Cliff McCurdy doesn't need to be Larry White. Okay, the curriculum, the material needs to be there, but he has to put his own style in there. And there's going to be coaches that are going to say, "Oh, I don't like that," or "He changed this," or that comes through progress, and it's going to happen. I had people say the same thing to me. I've had people come up and say, "Boy, I don't think this is taught in the curriculum. I don't think it should be on this test." And I just smile and go on about my business. He's going to have the same problems. I'm hoping that he's going to be able to make use of the calculator as a way to ask good questions. I started putting some problems on there where a graphing calculator was the way to solve it. By examining a graph and watching how the graph went. What could you predict? So I'm hoping he's going to go that direction. Him knowing as much about the calculator and the curriculum as he does, I'm hoping that he will go that direction and be able to ask some of those better questions. You can get data on a calculator, a series of regression numbers. You can get data, but can you do anything with it? And to use a calculator to get that data, can you have a question that data can be pulled off that calculator to answer without just having an answer? Bearing problems. The bearing problems. Yes, I did not know until about 3-4 years ago. Most teachers were doing it through vectors.
Yes.
But there's actually a program on the calculator. Cliff was telling me about this. I believe it's Cliff. Somebody's told me about this. There's a program on the calculator where you can put those bearings in there and those numbers, and it throws the answer out immediately.
Wow. Yeah.
And that sort of bummed me out because I love those problems. I think those problems are super to work out mathematically. And so it made me start thinking, well, how can I do this and still get the effect of what I want? So I changed in how I wrote the question, because now I knew what the calculator could do. And I wasn't avoiding the calculator. You can still use the information in the calculator, but you have to be able to move it over to the problem itself.
Right, yeah.
I think Cliff will be able to do that very effectively. Okay. Because he knows things that going on there that I don't know.
Sure.
And,
wow.
So, yeah, I think it's going to be good. I'm hoping there's been discussion over the years to combine calculator with math and just have one contest. And I hope that never happens. I think mathematics is a pure math curriculum, and I think the calculator is dedicated to engineering.
Yes. I like where it is, yes.
Yeah, I believe that's where it was created. That's where slide rule was created. It was created for engineering. I don't ever want to see those two combined. because I think they're two totally different tests. And, it's ironic. I've looked at Dr. Burrell's calculator test, and I've taken problems from it. But one of my favorite things to do on a math test is to describe a situation and not give them a picture, and make them put very few problems in life. They give you the problem. Yeah. You have to draw it. You have to scale it to be able to solve it. So I would take some of his geometry problems, his picture problems, and I would create words, and to where they would, now this line is perpendicular to here, and this angle is, and make them draw it. Now it takes a little bit more time on the math test to do that, but the more the kids do that, the better they get. And besides that, it's good for them. Yeah. So they all work together. And of course, number sense kids always have a little advantage on my math test, because I'm always throwing number sense problems over there.
Yeah, they do reinforce it, one with the other. They all reinforce each other. Absolutely.
Yes, they really do. They make a lot of difference.
So I was going to ask you, what do you believe that your legacy will be?
Wow. Never really thought about a legacy.
Well, you got many years ahead of you, so you still got many more years of influence. But 2 decades is quite a time.
Yeah. Well, I just hope that kids learned from what I did. Coaches learned from what I did. I hope that I influenced their life in a way. A teacher's life is a strange one. If you're a contractor and you're building a house, the framer comes in, he frames it, he can see when it's finished. The painter comes in, he paints it, he can see when it's finished. House gets through, people move in, they can see the product, wonderful. Teachers aren't so lucky. We do the best we can to teach them the best way we know how. We hope we never do anything to turn them a wrong direction, on a wrong path. But you know what? We have to wait 5 and 6 and 10 years to see what we did, how we affected that child. And that's scary. It's always been a scary thing to me, because did I do something wrong? Did I steer this child wrong? Same thing with the math tests and writing the test. I don't want to do anything that will turn them off. I want them to be successful. I will never see that until down the line. Yes. So I'm banking on I did the right things. And so I guess if you want to say what my legacy would be, I hope every child that I've touched in my lifetime is a success in some way. And they don't have to be doctors and lawyers, but they have to be a success in their lifetime. I taught 2 boys way back in the first few years of my teaching. I taught 2 boys, 2 brothers in math class in junior high, and they weren't dumb as dirt, but they weren't very smart, but they were good kids, and I loved them to death. And I remember when they were getting to graduate, and I asked them what they were going to do, and they said they didn't know, because college wasn't in there. College isn't for everybody.
Sure.
And I said, well, what do y'all like to do? And they said, well, we like to work outside. So we help our daddy move dirt and stuff like that with dirt machines. I said, well, open up a dirt business. I said, well, that's an idea. Well, anyways, they left. I moved on to another school. And I came back through that town several years later, and there was the sign on this building that said the name of the brothers dirt moving business. I I felt like I had something to do with it. I felt like I gave them a direction, a path to take. And they're very successful. Probably make a whole lot more money than I ever dreamed of. Teachers don't make any money. But, so, yeah, I hope I didn't hurt any children intentionally. And I hope that somewhere along the line, I was able to point them in a direction that maybe helped them get to where they're going to be. That's my legacy. As far as, whether I was the best math director or not, there's only been two, Don Scout and myself. And there's been several number sense coaches over the years. I'm the longest lasting one so far.
Wow.
But we don't compare each other to such things. And every test I've ever read from written by other people are just as good as mine. So I don't look at it from that perspective in any way. I just hope that I help kids, I help coaches, and I follow the path that I think my Lord sent me on. I think the greatest legacy I want is the Lord to let me know that I did what He wanted me to do, because He is the greatest teacher, and I try to follow His footsteps. So maybe that's my legacy.
Awesome. And what a legacy. So I know you're maintaining the directorship of Number Sense, but so what else does the future hold for Larry White?
Well, it's winding down. I think I'm only going to get to live to be 107, so I only have about 33 more years to go.
Make it a happy number. Make it your age a happy number.
That's right. It's I still do my computer business, and I really don't open it full time or anything. I really do it to help people, especially older people that are having trouble. I take over computers over online, and sometimes I go to places and work on them. So I keep that open. It sort of feeds my travel plans. My wife and I love to cruise. We haven't been able to the last couple of years, which is sad. So we've taken it upon ourselves to go see all the state parks of Texas.
Oh, wow.
And so we take our trailer and we take off and go do the things. My goals in math and stuff is to continue to help Cliff as long as he wants me to help guide and help him whenever he needs. Cliff and I have a wonderful relationship. He has no trouble contacting me and saying, I think this problem could be worked differently, or this could be a right answer, and we'll discuss it. Don and I had the same relationship, so we can talk to each other. So I continue to help Cliff, and he helps me with the number sense. Well, I want to expand number sense in the fact that I want to bring in some more sort of shortcuts. I come across them either by research or mainly I'll be playing around with numbers. I'll see something and go, wow, that's pretty cool. So I'll get to playing with it, and then I have to prove it. And then I said, so I want to do that. I want to finish the number sense history. I think that's important. Because we don't need to let that legacy go by. It's important that we know that number sense, mental math has been around a long, long time. And when I went to UIL a couple of years ago and told them what I wanted to do, they said, boy, that would be great. Said, we don't have any
history.
They have a bunch of stuff on CDs and stuff, and I went through the books and the archives, and I pulled pieces of stuff. And so I'm hoping to put this in together. I think it'll be a wonderful thing to have for UIL to have. There's not going to be a fee. I'm not charging for it.
I'll tell you what, when you get done, maybe you can come back on and give us some more preview and little tidbits.
Yeah, we can do that. We'll do that. I'll come on anytime you want me on, and we'll talk about anything you want to talk about. We can talk about we can talk about special nonsense shortcuts. Because there again, I'm not going to help you as a coach with a new problem this year. But if it's an old problem, it's open game, and I'll teach. I'll teach you anything you want to know. So yeah, I'll be happy to come on and talk anytime, because what you're doing is making this transparent to the world.
Wow. People
need to see it, and somehow we've got to get your YouTubes out there. You got to find a way to get more people. I'm going to talk about it at the SACs.
Thank you.
We got to get more people noticing. Hey, that stuff's sick.
It's too beautiful not to share. It's too beautiful not to share.
People say that I'm crazy because I keep saying mathematics is beautiful. It is beautiful. It is, without a doubt, some of the most beautiful things in the world. So anyways, I'm going to just go on with life, and we're going to travel, and I spend time with my wonderful wife. When you've been together 54 years, she's put up with me in all these years, and we gel. Once again, I was blessed. I met my wife on November 1st. November 4th. I asked her to marry me on December 1st, and we were married January 11th.
Wow. Wow, what a story.
I mean, it was just, I was going to a dance, and I was meeting my date there, and when my date walked through the door, my future bride was right behind her.
Oh, she wasn't your date.
No.
It gets spicy.
I walked right past my date and introduced myself to her.
Oh, wow.
And we were married on January 11th, 53 years ago.
Awesome.
And
awesome.
We've been together, and we cherish our time together. Sit out underneath the trees and just enjoy life. And yeah, it's I got lots of things to do. I've got plans in the back of my mind. People keep saying I need to write a number sense book, and people want me to write solutions to my math tests. But you can't write math tests and solutions too. It's almost impossible. I have solutions to all of them, but they're not printable. But so life's good. If the Lord lets me continue on, I'm going to do everything I can. I don't own a rocking chair, so there's no retirement in me.
Cool.
And I hope my brain continues to work effectively. I can tell it's starting to slip a little bit in memory and stuff. It does that after a while, but I think number sense and math has kept me sharp. At least those kids have kept me sharp. I think the future is going to be great.
Awesome. Any parting words as we conclude the interview?
Love mathematics. Love yourself. Love your creator. I spend my mornings before I start my life every day reading my scriptures. I have my prayer. I walk with him. I spend, I think I have to get out into nature and walk with him. You don't have to walk with him long. You have to just walk with him for whatever time you need. Because I cannot imagine life without him. And for all those people that have not found him, you need to find a way to find him. Kids need to love their parents and their coaches and their friends, and keep hopeful. There's so much bad out there, but it's only because the bad is being published. There's 95%, 98% good in this world. Yeah. The TV and the social media and all that stuff is painting it a bad picture. It's not bad. Life is wonderful. Life is wonderful. And the world is wonderful. In kids, you're only going to be kids for so long. Now, you still could be an old kid like me. It's okay. I'm as big a kid as any kid. I'm just an old kid. But kids are only going to be kids so long. Enjoy what you're doing. Enjoy life as a kid. You're going to get challenged into the workforce. You're going to have to go there. So enjoy. Don't let it go by. And take every opportunity to learn, to meet new people, to praise your Creator. Don't let time slip by. There's one thing I regret most, and that's the minutes I let go by and didn't make them worthwhile. You can't let time go by. We think we live forever, and that time scale is so tiny. So you have to reach out, carpe diem, reach out and grab everything you want. Nobody can tell you can't do something except you.
That's right.
So whatever you choose to do, get help doing it if need be, but do it. Reach out, go for it.
Director Larry White, you've led with dignity and grace. I can think of no more eloquent, no more powerful way to conclude this interview. You honor my channel by being on, and I just want to thank you sincerely and from the deepest part of my heart, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to reach more kids and more coaches and more people.
Oh, absolutely.
Because that's what I want to do.
Your message is beautiful, eloquent, powerful. Thank you again. Thank you so much.
And anytime you want me back, you just give me a hug.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You're royalty. All right, you're royalty as far as I'm concerned. So
the only crown I have is a bald spot on the back of my head.
I appreciate you so much. Farewell, Director Larry White.
Friend. Thank you.
What a fascinating man, Director Larry White. It was such a pleasure, such an honor to have interviewed him, and I'm so grateful for him being on this show. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, let me remind you that if you enjoy the content of this channel, hit the subscribe button along with the notification bell. Also, hit the like button and leave a comment below. I appreciate you. My name is Saul Cantu, and this is Texas Math Mundo. Farewell.